We're back. We're back. I hope everyone had a nice something or other.
Dry January? Is that what that would be?
Sure. I don't know. Either way, Many Constant Worlds is a meta-disjointed journey through the Dark Tower series by Stephen King that we just use as an excuse to read all of Stephen King. I'm Kat, she, her.
I'm Taryn, they, them, and I've never been prepared for anything in my life. I don't have my book with me. It's upstairs, and I refuse to go get it.
That's okay. I'm not going to share mine.
Nope. She's not. That's why I'm concerned. I'm mad because I actually did the reading twice. I did it 2 times.
Do you need me to go get your book?
No, I don't know where it is to tell you to get it.
Then I can't help you.
Like, I never do homework. I have never done a homework in my life. I am not a homework doer. I not only am here prepared, as we talked about before, I've started doing little flags. I didn't even just do flags. I color coded my flags. My flags are color coded. I'm a learner. How dare you?
It's infectious.
I feel like you pressed a button on me to get a joke out, and I don't appreciate it. I do appreciate it, but I don't appreciate it. Anyways, and then now my book is upstairs, and it was for nothing. I'll just have to picture it in my mind castle. You know what? I'll just have to do it Sherlock style.
So we fully support trigger warnings, and we just started reading it, and we all know the scene.
The trigger warning is it.
So it is just jam-packed with triggering content. I could probably spend an hour just sitting here listing all of the things that people have flagged as triggering in this book. So I'm going to list some of them. I'm going to very strongly encourage you to get online and look it up if you have concerns, because there's a lot of things, and there is content that sometimes I don't even think about, like, oh man, that is. And that's including for myself, because like I didn't think of death of a parent for The Eyes of the Dragon.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I didn't even think of that.
You know, I think it didn't occur to me because it's such a Disney cliche at this point. That particular death of a parent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
but
you can't.
You know, it is a valid thing, and
No, yeah, that's fair.
don't even think about it.
Yeah.
So, we're gonna try, and so trigger warnings for it, and thus this episode. This is just a condensed version. Child death, racial slurs, racism in general, death, bullying, child abuse, sexual content, murder, violence, domestic abuse, homophobia, gore, suicide, fat phobia, animal cruelty and death, like both things happen to animals, anti-Semitism, misogyny, pedophilia, sexual assault, and just a whole lot of other shit.
Yeah, I think if we're going to say racism and racial slurs, homophobia and like queerphobic, homophobic slurs, I just want to put that asterisk there. It's pretty bad.
It's pretty bad.
In the particular section that we are in today, it is particularly bad. The fat phobia is particularly bad as well, but I would say, and it's probably because as a queer person, it stood out. So
valid, and this is why
one of my flags, like one of the colors of the flags that I was using, was literally just to mark passages that was just, I hate it. So
I love that.
Yeah, I had to, because it was rough reading. It was hard to get through. I realized I wasn't able to read Misery. So, listeners, you might think that I'm kind of a little weak baby thing when it comes to things. And I am in a lot of other ways, but when it comes to reading books, not like, I can read almost anything that you put in front of me, and I don't get particularly triggered easily. I just don't. This was rough.
Yeah.
So when we're saying trigger warning, please take care of yourself.
Yeah, you can skip this one. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. No.
Do not put yourself through this.
No, it's been good so far. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
If you're really curious, we'll tell you all about it.
Yeah, that is the joy. If you think you can at least handle whatever like amount we have to touch, because we're not gonna like read these parts, we might sum them up a bit like with Misery, where I tried not to get into too crazy a detail of the body horror, because first of all, I don't really like body horror.
Blech.
I don't necessarily like it's not because of like a gross thing, it's just it's not entertaining to me. I'm not a body horror person.
I find it gross, but not like in a scary way, just in a genuinely like,
yeah,
it is done to be gross. It accomplishes that. It's not like it is gross. Sometimes it's funny.
Sometimes it's funny.
I do think sometimes when it is done in the right way, it can be funny.
You mean like Lucius losing his finger?
Yeah, I mean, I actually was thinking more like the entire movie of Krampus.
Oh, that's fair. That is a good movie. So we read It Part 1 through Interlude 1. Well, to start off, like before we actually get into the meat of the book, this one is dedicated to his mother, wife, and 3 children. He also lists out his kids' ages.
Sue him. Thanks, Dad. Thanks that this is the one that you dedicate. I mean, maybe he dedicates all of them.
I think he dedicates, because like The Eyes of the Dragon was dedicated to Naomi and to
I'm just saying,
Peter Straub's
like,
son,
you know
Ben.
what? You can leave me off of this one.
But the thing that got me was listing the ages. That's just kind of unusual, because he doesn't typically do that.
It's how he's proving that he knows kids. He knows what he's talking about.
He knows how children behave.
Shit on Shinola. I'm getting ahead of us.
So It was first published in September of 1986, inspired by a walk across a wooden bridge and the Three Billy Goats Gruff story, mixed with memories of King's own childhood.
I think he's a fucking liar.
I think he is too.
People ask you, when you are a writer, people ask you all the time, what inspired you? What inspired this one? And I think we have gotten to a point where he just says whatever random
He's
shit
a fucking
you can
writer.
think of.
He's making shit up, guys.
He's not even making shit up well, either. He's just like, what bullshit can I say that will make everyone else feel bad?
Either way, if you're interested in what he claims is the story behind It, you can go onto his website, and if you look up the It in entry, it's there. I'll drop a link in the description. So, but yes, I also think that he's making this shit up. I think it just doesn't feel likely.
We're gonna get to a book in like a year or two, and they're gonna be like, what inspired this one? And he'll be like, well, I was eating a ham sandwich. And I just had this bite of a ham sandwich that had a lot of mayonnaise in it. And then it dribbled out of the side of my mouth. And just the way that it dribbled made me think, like, what if there was a monster that had, like, really nasty white shit that dribbled out of its mouth? And so then I made a monster for that. And I wrote a fucking 2,000-page book about it.
All I can think of is Cujo, because how the rabies...
Now I need to know if that's how he says. Oh God, this is the most water I've drank in my entire life because I'm just angry sipping at my fucking water.
There's mini sips, and then there's Taryn's angry sips.
Right? And I also want to clarify, as I'm this mad, so far I'm loving this book.
Oh yeah,
It's really, really good. I don't like being trolled.
That's fair. You know what? Let's start there then, because I can't say, of the stuff that we have read to this point, this has been the one I've enjoyed the most. It's problematic, and I don't want to condone that shit. There are definitely things that make me uncomfortable in this book, but in terms of, the actual writing, it's well put together, and it's very compelling, and I keep wanting to read more, stopping so that I could... put together our shit for this so that I wouldn't, go too far is hard because it's really good.
It's hard to say because this is the first new thing other than The Mist that I've read, because I didn't read Misery. I'd already read Eyes of the Dragon, and the whole point, like, I've been all over the Gunslinger.
Yeah.
I have to say it's quality. I get now why people feel like Stephen King is, and I say that as someone who's been obsessed with what he would describe as his magnum opus since I was a teenager. Now I get why people say that he is, this wordsmith, that he's this master of imagery. I'm waiting to see why he's considered a master of horror.
Valid.
But I think that you're not really meant to be scared yet.
That's fair.
I think that currently, even up through the interlude that we've made it through, we're building tension, or we're meant to be building tension. And it also might be different if I hadn't seen the movies.
We've been all over those It movies.
Yeah, they're pretty great. Bill Hader is a dream. I fucking love Bill Hader. He's my everything. Call me. Yeah. If and when you break up with Anna Kendrick, because I think that's who he's with right now, and I approve. Also, both of you call me. That is a polycule I could get with. Regardless,
don't limit yourself. I mean,
no,
fuck.
I am so in love with both of them, and I'm in love with the idea of them together. And please, like, either way, like, as we get further into it, I am glad that I saw the movie before reading the book. I don't think I'd feel the same way about the movies had I read it, or had that happen the other direction.
I will say I really appreciate that, like, the book has a table of contents, which not all of his books do. It made it kind of easier to divide this up and attack it.
I think it's harder to do a table of contents when you're kind of going for an epic poetry feel, or when it's actually a collection of short stories that have to do with each other. This is the first thing that we're reading that truly is like a book. I don't know if Misery had a table of contents.
It did not.
I still stand by the idea that Misery is really meant, like, it is meant more to be like a play or something. Yeah. I think that is how he sees it in his mind, and that's why it's such a small cast of people.
Yeah.
And it's like on a stage. It's everything could be happening almost entirely without moving the scene.
Yeah.
It's all just right there. Like you could be watching it through the fourth wall, like, and seeing Paul Sheldon in bed and Annie Wilkes enters from stage left or whatever. And like, it just, it all takes place like that. So harder to do a table of contents for that. This is one of the first things really that we've bit into that truly feels like it is meant to be in this medium.
No, it's true. And I definitely appreciated that because, like I mentioned last time, thick books scare me. Like, I love them. I'm very, like, into thick books in theory, but they're terrifying. And this is like 1,100 some pages. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
So.
I feel like they scare you the same way that, like, a big pizza or like a buffet scares you. You just gotta get in and, like, you just start from the edges and work your way to the center. Which is a better metaphor for a puzzle, but I like mine better.
So we do have a lot to get through. We got things. So the things. Part 1, The Shadows Before, starts with actually, I'm backing up. Forgot one thing.
Backing up. We don't actually know the woman who was in that video. We just know a woman who's actually basically her twin, her long-lost twin.
It is disturbing.
It's really disturbing, and it's also amazing.
So the book itself opens with song quotes, including one that we are going to hear many of the characters repeat through part 1, and that is from Neil Young's Out of the Blue and Into the Black. That is from Hey Hey Yeah Yeah or something like that. I have it down somewhere. I will look it up.
I don't know. I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at how ridiculous songs used to be, but still are, because like Outkast had a such a huge hit that was called Hey Ya. It's the same
It's a
shit.
banger.
It's a good song. Like, that's not the point. It's also a really depressing song when you actually listen to the lyrics.
Horribly depressing
And
when you
everybody's
think
like
about it too
dancing
long.
and having such a good time. And they're like, yeah, this one's fun. Like letting their kids dance to it and shit. And it's like, are you fucking paying attention? Nobody gives a shit.
It's a banger.
It's besides the point. I just can't. Like, oh God. Humans are fucking stupid. Like,
So, yeah, The Shadows Before then also continues with more quotes. And we hop into the Wayback Machine and go to 1957 when Stephen King was 10 years old. This isn't about him as a 10-year-old, is it?
I thought you were going to say, like, when rock was young and radio was king.
So Derry has experienced a pretty nasty flood. Children will be children, and Georgie...
And men will be men.
They will, especially in Derry. There's a very specific idea of what makes a man. And
you know what? When we get to that part, oh my God,
Georgie Denbrough follows a boat that was made for him by his big brother Bill, who is 10, and Bill is homesick with the flu.
What? 10?
I
What?
know.
That's so weird. And his name is Bill?
His name is Bill.
I don't know. Our theory kind of falls apart. That's not like Paul at all. And Paul and Bill aren't Steven. They're not completely fucking bland white guy names like Steven.
But don't call him Steve-O.
Or what? Don't call him Steve-O. Why? Did he actually care about being called Steve-O before like fucking, oh God, why am I blanking?
Jackass.
Yes, jackass, thank you. Did he actually care? And also, has he ever met Steve-O, especially Clean Steve-O? Clean Steve-O's been through... I feel like those two would have a lot to talk about.
That's fair.
Fucking Stephen King want to talk shit on Steve-O.
I don't know that he wants to talk shit on Steve. I don't know that Stephen King is aware what a Steve-O is.
Sorry. What a Steve-O is. No, it is a class of... Like... You can... Okay, so here you're going to pick your race. You can be a human, an elf, a halfling. Oh, but then you're going to pick your class. You can be a wizard, a barbarian. Oh, you could also be a Steve-O. You could pick that. Like a barbarian can fly into a rage. A Steve-O can go into like a stupidity. And like you get like a +2 to like... I don't even know. I've taken this joke as far as I can take it.
So when you describe this, what I think of is a Souls game and like the really hard mode character because they always come with no clothes. And Steve-O is very often in like his underwear in Jackass.
I can't remember if it's Dark Souls 3 or Bloodborne. I think it's Bloodborne. But one of them, that character is called a milk toast. And milk is spelled MILQUE. A milk toast or some shit. It might be like a milk sop. I don't remember. But it's something like that. I had never played a Souls type game before. I just knew that they were hard. I didn't know. I'm like, I didn't understand that these were almost like modes of the game. That's what I picked. Because I didn't know any better. I'm like, okay, this is hilarious. I'll pick this. This is super funny. Because you gotta go for the joke. Why wouldn't you go for the joke? That was a mistake. Obviously, that was a mistake.
It was a mistake.
But you know what would happen is I'd have to pick the Steve-O. Like, I'd have to pick the Steve-O. How would you not?
You did.
But what happens is... If that was a category, when you customize the face, automatically picture of the face on the back. You have to. It just puts it there, just automatically.
Fair.
I need it. I need this more than I need somebody mod
a Jackass Souls type game.
Yes, because it's very hard and like. You do the dumbest shit in the world.
Yeah.
I need this. I need somebody to mod, because they do mods.
Yeah.
I need somebody to please mod Dark Souls 3, because I still haven't finished that one anyways. I'm horrible at video games, but the same way that I beg for things every episode, I am asking somebody to please mod a game to make the Steve-O class and then teach me how to use mods on Dirt, because I don't fucking know how to. I can't do, because I don't play on PC. I play on Xbox. So also teach me that. Thank you.
So Bill is homesick with the flu. And, like, Mom is playing piano downstairs. And
one of, like, 2 songs that every person who plays piano knows how to do. And anybody who knows what a piano is knows that song exists. I don't believe Stephen King knows anything about pianos. He's like, oh, I know, like, 2 piano songs.
Maybe he knows more piano.
Piano Wilkes.
So yeah, Mom's playing piano downstairs while they build the boat, and so Bill sends Georgie down to get some, like, paraffin or something for, like, sealing it.
Shock, she didn't break out heart and soul.
The boys bond over calling each other a-holes, and then Georgie goes off sailing.
Okay, I actually I do want to cut in here. I have a serious issue with how Stephen King writes children. I don't think he does it well. I don't think he knows how.
But he knows children. He gave you their ages.
I know.
He told you how old those children were.
That alone felt the most like a fucking Redditor on Reddit trying to back up their claim by going, but I'm a psychologist. And it's like, you're a 14-year-old sitting in your fucking room. Like, I can go through your history and see that you're a psychologist here, but then on this thread, you're a fucking
race car driver.
Yeah, exactly. And then over here, you're an astronaut. I don't fucking know. You're all these different things. Shut the fuck up. Like, that, he's like, but I'm a parent. It's like, dude, you're one of those dads who calls parenting babysitting. Sit down and shut the fuck up. But that scene with Bill and Georgie and bonding over, like, who's the bigger a-hole and cracking each other up with that. Not only did it make me really sad for, like, because I have 3 siblings, and they're young. They're a lot younger than me. I would not only die for them, I would fucking murder for them, and you don't have to be endangering their lives. It could just make their lives slightly better. I will cut a bitch. I don't want to say estranged. I'm just, if you're an adult with siblings that you're not very close to, but you were close to growing up, you get what I mean. I have siblings that I don't talk to all the time, but we were close growing up. It made my heart, like, hurt reading it, because that is so accurate. Like, when you read shit that's like, they were so loving and adoring, and, oh, but then they had, like, a little fight and a little scuffle or whatever. It's such bullshit. That is not, I feel like, how, maybe it is how girls bond. I obviously did not function like a normal sister, because I wasn't a normal sister. I got along better with my brothers for a lot of very obvious reasons. And I can just say that I really have to give him kudos for that. Like, it made me happy and sad in the best way. Oh, it was just so good. That was so good.
So the 6-year-old ends up losing the boat down a drain where he hears a voice and sees a clown. Things don't end great for Georgie.
Yeah, because Stephen King seems to think that children are written by just making them stupider adults.
So Georgie gets his arm ripped off and he dies. Dave Gardner being the first person to find him after it happens in the street.
But we need to note here, and I had noted it in the book that I won't go and get, that he gives a name.
He does, yes. He gives him the name Bob Gray.
Which would also be, I imagine, like Robert Gray.
Bobbert Gray.
You can't say that, because immediately my brain goes to Bobert. And then all I think of is Anthony Birch being like, I can fix her. And me being like, you can, sir. Like,
at the end of chapter 1, we are also introduced to who I find to be the most interesting character so far in this book. That's the narrator.
Right?
There's a very distinct voice that refers to itself at the end of the chapter. To this point, the book could have simply been written in third person, but the narrator reveals themselves when they use the word I when expressing not knowing what happened to the boat after it left Derry, and that it's like exiting this tale forever. We have a very distinct narrator, And they are upfront about what they do and don't know, which means they also have a limited knowledge of things. What happened to Kieran? As we move into chapter 2, we are hurled into 1984. Stephen King is now 37 years old.
So I just can't. Rock and roll was king. And
Here we learn of the murder of Adrian Mellon at the hands of 3 Derry teens. One of the cops questioning the boy is Harold Gardner, one of Dave Gardner's sons.
This, as warning, this is where the intense homophobia and transphobia begins. So if you aren't here for it, just know, like, I'm here and I'm in it with you. But it fucking sucks, and it's very indicative of what shit was like in the 1980s. This is the middle of the AIDS crisis.
We learn about Adrian's work bringing him to Derry from the statements of the teens, his boyfriend Don Haggerty, and some third-person magical narrator. The perpetrators of Adrian's murder are Steve Dubé, Chris Unwin. I don't know if I typoed that.
I think you have it right.
Okay.
I think Unwin.
Okay.
So I read this physically, and then I also listened to it on audiobook, so I do think you have the name right.
Okay.
That sounds right.
And John Weber Garton, also known as Webby, which made me just think of DuckTales.
You know what? I also because when I started to have to fucking dissociate to get through this section, I also was thinking Webby from DuckTales. This was rough.
During the questioning, Chris reveals most of the details, including that there was a clown involved who took things too far. We get a little view of some of the other members of Derry who, while they don't love the gays, they also don't believe that they're hurting anyone, and murder is definitely not okay.
So that was one of the things that I wanted to point out as well, because there were a couple of cops that had kind of that point of view. It was still rough because the language that they were using throughout. So there, a lot of members of the queer community, I refer to myself as queer. That is how I would describe myself. But when they're using queer, they definitely don't mean it that way.
Yeah.
And then, the F slur gets tossed around a lot. This should make you uncomfortable. I don't like horror where this feels similar to body horror to me, where this isn't meant to make you scared. This is meant to make you feel gross.
Shock value.
Yes. And I think that's why I wanted to pause and talk about it, because the point is to ramp up. Like I said, we're building tension, right?
Yeah. And you do get a vibe for what Derry must be like. Like, it feels tense. Like, I wouldn't want to visit Derry. It's not a relaxing place. How Adrian managed to tolerate it, I don't even understand. I mean, I do, but I don't.
But I think what bothers me is that this is not... The fact that Stephen King is trying to present this as outsized...
Yeah.
is outrageous. It's not. I don't know that the rest of the world was really coming to terms yet with how bad it actually is or was. So, and I have to imagine, just because I'm of the impression, the same way that the rest of the world is, where of course there's pockets that are more conservative, there's pockets that are more liberal. Maine is that way, but Maine is, of course, it tends to be more liberal just on the whole, the same way that Vermont and places can be.
Especially when you're dealing with small town.
Yeah.
It's a whole other thing. I mean, you know small towns better than anybody.
Yeah.
It's like a whole freaking different, like, continent.
Yes.
And you just drive a little ways and then suddenly you're back in, like, society again.
Yeah.
It's wild.
The fact that he looked at this and thought, oh, this will be horrifying. Or this will look terrifying. Now, when we get to the end of this scene, there are things that are a lot, like, I can see the scary bits, but the fact that he's presenting, like, what happens is, like, again, an outsized horror, like this bashing that occurs, when it just isn't that strange. And he's trying to say, see, Derry is overly violent. No. this is not that overly violent. I think that's what's really bothered me in this scene. I will have issues also when we get to Beverly's part, because it's like he didn't talk to any abused women. He sought out mental health professionals before to talk to, but he had no idea.
I mean, like, I don't know that he had before, because this took him 5 years to write.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Some of that may have actually been what spurred him to start consulting somebody. I don't know how, because this doesn't have an intro like that point. Tells me like, oh, I consulted these doctors.
That's a good point.
So we don't necessarily know yet. We can do some research.
Yeah, I think it would be good to find out, because I have to say, like, I had to keep giving him passes. I had to keep reading it and going, well, you know, he's writing, these are meant to be gay men, but he's also writing them covered in makeup and nail polish and dressing, you know, genderqueer. And, you know, there is some understanding, like, at least within the community, there was understanding, like, maybe the terms weren't, like, transsexual probably would have been more the term than, or even drag queen or something. Like, gay men weren't necessarily all doing that. And we've talked, I think, at times about, well, that's what the character is doing. He made Paul Sheldon awful about women.
He made Paul Sheldon awful about everybody.
No, for sure.
Women, anybody of ethnic anything.
But when we were talking about how awful Misery was as far as, like, women, we did talk about the fact that, like, he made it's because it's Paul Sheldon's, the way that he treats women. And so we can kind of wiggle around, and it's like, well, that's because the character is terrible. That's not here. Like, he's making a conscious choice to also present these characters this way. Not Adrian, the other one, Dawn?
Dawn.
Yeah, Dawn.
Dawn or Dan. I think it's Dawn. Dawn Haggerty.
Dawn Haggerty growing up in that town. Like, and I realize we're not quite there in the discussion, but when he's in that room getting more and more flustered and screaming and upset, I can tell you as somebody who has to... I can tell you as somebody who lives this, you can't do that even if your partner just died. You can't. He wouldn't have that, like he's lucky they're talking to him. He's lucky he's not getting called an accomplice or getting hauled in on charges to do with the homosexuality. Like, it's not... You can't do that. He would have to keep his head together and stay calm. And he's lucky he's white, because if he wasn't, it would be worse. If you are any kind of minority, you can't interact with police like that. You cannot. And it is so much worse if you are any kind of minority that is just visible immediately. And Stephen King made sure that for those men, it was visible immediately. They are not trying to pass in any way. It is not safe in Derry to not pass. Why are they doing that? You wouldn't. It's ridiculous to me. This right here is some of the poorest writing I've seen from Stephen King, and it is the poorest understanding of who he's writing and what. I feel like he just looked around him, saw some queer people, and went, oh, I understand what's happening there, and then wrote it. And so not only was I made uncomfortable because what he wrote was meant to make you uncomfortable, I was uncomfortable because of the misrepresentation that was right there. And Stonewall had been 10 years earlier, if not more. Like, Stonewall may have even been in, like, the 60s, like late 60s, but also near him and well within his lifetime. So he had no excuse as far as I'm concerned. He should have known better. So I'm off my soapbox now. That's it.
So, a trial takes place, and Webby and Steve are convicted of first-degree manslaughter. Webby being sent to Thomastown State Prison for 10 to 20 years, and our buddy Steve being sent for 15 to Shawshank Prison.
Which, fuck,
we might visit him there.
I'm very excited because it means Kat's gonna finally watch Shawshank. I'm so down. But I'd also like to point out, there's a whole scene where they talk about the fact that they're keeping a bunch of evidence out and that they're pinning all of the injuries, all of the everything on them, on these guys, which means this community decided that this gay man's entire life was worth manslaughter. For what? Why only manslaughter? I don't think Stephen King understands the law. Number one, I don't think he understands how the legal system works, for one. Because of what happens in, like, the next paragraph. For two, it's really gross and it makes me really upset because it also has happened.
Yeah. Chris, meanwhile, was tried as a juvenile and convicted of second-degree manslaughter and sentenced to 6 months at South Wyndham Boys Training Facility, and the sentence was suspended. The clown detail was omitted from the trial for fear that it might result in a loss of the trial. And to everyone's surprise, not even Chris had mentioned it when he went up on the stand, which was one thing that they weren't certain if he would say something.
I realize it's a fictional... It's in a book. It's pretend. It's fiction. If you don't understand why I'm this upset, Google Harvey Milk. There's been tons more, and that's just the immediate one that I can think of. Google Harvey Milk and Google the Twinkie defense, and you will understand why I'm literally sick to my stomach, and that whole setup and, like, how he resolves it actually made me really upset. And not in a fun, ooh, tension, this is scary way.
Chapter 3 skips a year ahead to 1985, and Debbie is still living those dreams of youth and is very appropriately given the book we're reading, dedication, building a bridge between adolescence and adulthood.
So, 1985, when rock and roll was the top and radio was king?
I think it might have been.
I just needed to check, so I have some kind of sense of when I am and what's going on. Okay.
It's 1985. And as Jake said, growing up is probably a lie, and I'm going to cling to that a lot, so it doesn't matter, because growing up's a fucking lie.
I mean, you are wearing, like, the fluffiest of, like, snow leopard hats with, like, little paws at the end. I had a
rough week.
That's her hiding hat.
If I could build a fort, I would.
Why not?
Because the dogs would mess it up.
Just bring them in it.
They would still mess it up. They don't like our joy.
It's been rough, folks.
So yes, 1985, we get the intros to the Losers Club, and we mentioned we have watched at least the 2017, 2019 It movies a few times. We are aware of the fact that these are the main characters, and that they are called the Losers Club. So I'm not going to pretend like we don't know this. We are corrupted. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. And probably discussion won't be entirely spoiler free. Yeah. But I don't know if it'll spoiler the book, because quite frankly, things have been very different. Not like beginning with, and I'm pretty sure it's what begins here, Stanley fucking Uris. I would like to add to our justice hashtags, justice for Stanley, because I went from being mad at Stephen King to immediately being mad at Stephen King again, because why did he let that shit happen in the movie? Because it made Bill Denbrough cooler. Fucking rude. Rude again.
So similar to The Eyes of the Dragon, we are given info dumps on individuals receiving the 6 phone calls. First up is Stanley Uris, and boy does he shine. He has a preternatural, I can never say this word.
Preternatural
ability.
I guessed.
which seems to know how things are going to go. The chapter is told through the POV of Stan's wife, Patricia. She shares how they married, her parents' concern that they would be supporting Stan and Patricia, their struggles to have children, the quiet life they led, ending in Stan's suicide following the call from Mike.
How dare they also not put Patricia in the fucking movie?
I mean, she was vaguely there doing something in the background.
And at the
she was booking them a trip
call.
to Buenos Aires, I believe.
Yeah, Patricia was great in the book. I love Patricia. Justice for Patricia. Justice for the Urises. Filmmakers, we need to have a talk. You need to explain yourselves. This is me tapping the fucking laptop screen, going, America, explain. Explain. I am confusion.
Next, we have Richie Tozer. His stanza is told from his POV.
You want to talk about people who shine.
He is working as a DJ doing voices made up of many different characters. Richie takes his call from Mike and then tries to call out from his show for a bit, needing to return to Derry, and his director, Steve Clovel. Yeah, that's right. We got a second Steve entering the chat. Both spelled Steve.
His boss. Like, when Richie tries to call out, though, his boss is every fucking boss. Which I also, like, doesn't matter how rich you get, doesn't matter how successful you are, if you have a boss, they're gonna be a fucking boss about it. What, you have an emergency? But I have an emergency here, and it's that I want to make money.
So Richie tries to use his everything's okay voice, but it's a lie, just like all the others. Again, just like growing up. Then there's Ben. His stanza is told from the POV of the bartender at the bar Ben just really likes and is like there every
Isn't
Saturday.
That fucking weird.
Little bit. The bartender reflects on Ben coming in, his work, etc., and reveals how successful Ben is. Ben does eventually show up and puts away a whole bottle of some booze, much to the shock of Annie, the waitress.
Annie. So successful that the guy that gets money from him really likes him.
Right. Yeah, yep. Annie. And also, Ben's next project is in Colorado Springs, assuming he survives his trip back to Derry. So on to my favorite, Eddie.
My favorite is Richie.
This one is told from Eddie's POV. Admittedly, Eddie is just my favorite from the movies. I liked him in this too, but seriously, Jack Dylan Grazer and James Ransone played the hell out of that role.
They look like one of them. They look like the kid found they look like one of them, because I guess I can't say specifically the kid. They look like one of them found a time machine and then went, I'm playing this fucking part. And then just keeps time machining back and forth to do it.
Yeah, no.
And don't reveal it if you did, because it's what those fuckers in Hollywood will expect from everybody if you did.
But you are amazing.
God, I am so cranky.
I noticed.
I don't know where that came from. I've been in a really good mood all day.
So Eddie is clearing out his medicine cabinet, including taking his wife's Midol, because always be prepared. Eddie's wife, Myra, is a big lady, reminiscent of Eddie's mother, and she's panicking because Eddie is leaving.
And he didn't leave her anything.
No, he left her a limo business. Because she's got to drive.
Even Midol, it's so rude.
Yeah.
There is no way that lady doesn't need some of the shit from that medicine cabinet to live her life. He even had Quaaludes in there. You think she doesn't need some help to sleep? Like, fuck. Quaaludes, by the way, because I'm sure you have no idea because you don't live, eat, sleep, and breathe true crime like I do. Quaaludes are, I believe, what Bill Cosby used to commit his crimes.
Gross.
That's how I even know what they are.
Well, shifting POVs again, we are now seeing Beverly. This
is another one that pissed me off.
Bev is seen through the eyes of her piece of shit husband, Tom.
You can't say it like that. My brain immediately finished it with Eyes of the Dragon.
I keep picturing Tom from MySpace.
Tommy.
Yeah.
Thomas, the Lightbringer.
Yeah. I was thought about that too, but I was too busy thinking of Tom and his little like
just so you're aware, Kat modeled for me, still in her Snow Panther, like her Snow Panther Heidi hat. She mimicked for me, turning to the side, the little over the shoulder at the keyboard. And if you're too young to know what the fuck we're talking about, fuck you. I don't want to die, and I don't want to deal with getting old. Fuck you. You pieces of shit for being young.
Tom was our first social media friend.
Tom is the only one who understands me.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what I need. I don't understand why I'm so, like, I don't know where this came from.
So Tom details how he systematically broke this woman because she was weak, how he must correct her. It's truly disgusting. Bev gets her call from Mike and goes to leave. The idea that Bev is leaving after the call from another man doesn't even register to Tom's radar because he's so consumed by having seen her smoke a cigarette when he told her to not do that.
Cannot.
And so he thought he beat the smoking out of her. A fight ensues and Bev gets the fuck out of there.
Which always works, by the way. Beating, you can absolutely beat shit that you want in and out of people all the time. Stephen fucking King wrote that Beverly fucking chose. Like, when he smacks her in the car, I can't.
It's pretty bad. It's a pretty bad chapter. It's very upsetting.
I'm so mad. I get so mad about this fucking chapter. It's the most.
So far.
Oh, don't. Don't.
It took you a minute.
That's because I was debating starting to throw shit around in the sink just to get it out of me. I cannot. Story time. And apologies to any members of my family who listen to this podcast. Yeah, that's all I'm saying about that. I grew up in a household with violence. My dad was abusive to my mom. And I don't know really what happened, like, behind closed doors. I have seen now, like, my whole life, the effect that had. My dad is dead, by the way. I don't know if I'm sure I've covered that at other times, but I just want to reiterate, he's gone now. I have seen the effect that had moving forward, and not to tell her story, but I'm just saying, like, Beverly reminds me so much of my mother that reading this shit take on a woman who's been through that kind of shit and having to read with my own fucking eyeballs a man say, like, when they're in the car with Tom and Tom wants to push it and just see what would happen. And so, you know, she said she'd quit smoking, and so he fucking, like, smacks her or whatever. And first she's shocked, but then before she gets upset, she has, like, the flicker of nostalgia or recognition or whatever. Now, what I believe Stephen King is going for here is he's trying to show that Tom is one of those pieces of shit that targets victims, that targets people, like, that he can sniff it out. And that is absolutely something that they do. But Beverly tries to protect herself in that moment. And she says, this isn't a normal relationship. This isn't what one looks like, and I want out. And now what actually happens in those scenarios, because I can tell you, as somebody who grew up, that, like, the cycle of abuse continues as you go on, is that they don't reply coldly and logically that you can leave or whatever the fuck, they then continue to beat you because you're not gonna leave, you're theirs. Like, they're gonna keep control over you. Beverly doesn't get a choice in that moment. He's not giving her a choice. So it's yet another situation that Stephen King is trying to present that he has no fucking understanding of. And so what he's done is show, oh, but see, she could leave, but because it's like what her dad used to do. And I have a theory that Stephen King maybe had some trauma in his childhood, but it's generally somewhat different for men. Now, men also get abused by their partners, and that cycle of abuse can look like it looks the same. It's still abuse. I'm not trying to say that men don't or AMAB people or like I'm not trying to say that doesn't happen. But I am trying to say that when you, especially in a car, when you are trapped in a small space with someone who is bigger than you, who just showed you that they react with violence, and they're saying, oh yeah, you have a choice. Beverly had no choice in that moment, and she knew moving forward that she had no choice. And how fucking dare Stephen King try to make it like obviously the character of Beverly gets presented as though she has one. And that she has a choice the whole fucking time. Look, she leaves right now. She has to fight a little bit because they've, laid out this whole relationship. But look, she gets away from him and it's all great. And I have never been more disgusted by or hated Stephen King more than this chapter. Other than maybe the gay bashing chapter. And in reality, I didn't really hate him for that. He just seemed dumb and like he didn't really know. And in the 80s, it was tough. And without internet, it can be tough. This shit, he could have gone to any battered women's shelter and they would have taught him better. And I don't believe that they didn't have this information in the 80s. I just don't. I think that I think he just thought he knew what was going on. This chapter was extremely triggering for me. It's triggering to talk about now. Actually, this I think explains why I'm so cranky. I knew it was coming. It's super triggering to deal with and to talk about. It's going to be triggering dealing with Beverly moving forward. And I hate it. When I re-listened to this section, I had to skip this chapter because this makes me so mad. It makes me so mad. So, all apologies, and I'm sorry if you have to cut a whole bunch of that out. I do hope you leave some of my tantrum in.
Well, it'll be in,
but
to anyone who needs help, we will also have some resources in the description of the episode.
It takes, I think, something like 7 tries, maybe, I think that's the number, but it could be more, to try and leave a domestic abuse situation. And another statistics that's really important to know, if you are in a situation like that, if your abuser has ever put their hands on your neck or choked you, and I'm not talking about consensual, like, hey, do you? If that's your kink, do you? I'm talking about if you are in a situation where you have been hurt, like they abuse you, if they have ever put their hands on your neck and choked you, it's something like the chances of them killing you go up by like 90%. Please get help.
So the last phone call goes to Bill. We learned that Bill went to college. He took a writing course, which he sucked at, and it drove him to write and sell his first short story and launched him into a full writing career. Bill married an actress, and when he reveals to her that he has to return to Derry, he tells her about what actually happened to Georgie. She doesn't love that Bill is leaving, but ultimately, she supports him.
Fucking Bill then, bro.
And then the last part that we read was Interlude 1. And this actually focuses on Mike, the guy who was making all of the phone calls.
Which also happens to be in first person.
Yes.
And I believe we may have found our narrator.
Maybe.
That's why I said earlier, like, when you mentioned, like, the narrator's a character, like, there's somebody saying, like, something. I pegged that, too, and I agree with you, like, that idea, and, like, what happened to Curran. But when we got here, and this interlude started, and we're in first person, I was like, I see you, Mike.
A solid argument. He's a possibility.
Because he's talking about writing a history of Derry.
Yeah.
So if this is the history of Derry that he decides that he's writing.
Is Mike the narrator of all of the Kingverse? Mike is diving into the history of Derry, having never left like the others. Murder of Adrian Mellon, he knew the time had come to reassemble the Losers Club.
Avengers.
Mike has done some digging to find out about other murdered children who ranged from the ages of 3 to 19.
Oh, geez, really?
Yes.
I didn't even catch that. Yeah. Incredible. Do you remember when in-game was still a thing, and then people made those cuts with when everybody was coming out of Doctor Strange's, like, magic holes?
Yeah.
And it was like, what, you wanted more? And then, like, more and more people came out. Now I want the Losers Club to come out of one of them. Both young and old Losers Club.
It's gonna be the kids and the adults.
Yeah.
Here is also where we get our connection to the revised Gunslinger. When Betty Ripsom's mother was doing dishes, she heard voices in the drain. She asked who they were, and they replied, "We are Legion."
I had thoughts about that, though, because they said it to the mom. They said it to a woman. Mm-hmm. Do you think that they're actually a demon? Or, because Legion is, that's they're kind of referring to the idea of the hordes of demon. You know what I mean? Or, we've seen now Sylvia Pittston, the one in The Mist, Carmody, Annie, we know, everybody knows Carrie's mom is super religious. We've seen, I feel like there's other hyper-religious moms. I don't know if we've seen them, but...
I don't know that we've gotten too deep into them, because, like, obviously we keep talking about Carrie, and we haven't even gotten to Carrie.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think one of the most notable is her mom. It's an obvious theme, because I think there's also, I don't know that it's not a woman, it's a boy in Desperation who's, like, real religious. And he's not a crazy lady, which, misogyny is strong with Stephen King, but he supposedly can, like, talk to God.
We don't have much of a explanation for, like, because it doesn't seem like Mrs. Carmody has children.
It doesn't seem like it.
And Annie didn't have children, but Annie was crazy. We know that.
And I mean, Annie was, like, she was religious, but she was not a Mrs. Carmody.
But it's still religious. Like, the place that I'm going with that is, well, here, you can almost see it starting here. It's like that's a way to wriggle into somebody's brain.
Yeah. Because
does Mrs. Ripsom become one of these women? Is that the goal? Like, make her, like, this is the start of that. This line, "We are Legion," and then that's the beginning of it. And now she's, raving to everybody, well, I heard voices, I heard the demon, my daughter's down there, especially since her husband, like, I imagine you were about to say, like, he hears what he hears. And then it's my daughter's down there, and it's a demon, and we have to fight the demon. And Derry is already so stirred up and so violent and so conflicted. And then, because Stephen King has, obviously, there is the gay thing, and he's making that such a point. He's made that such a point. And we know that evangelical Christians, like, that is such a point.
Yeah.
That's not, obviously, the Gunslinger, their version of biblicalness, they're not going that route. But in the 1980s, like, women being at home, and Beverly is it works outside the home.
Yeah, she's a fashion designer.
That's a huge issue. Gayness is a huge issue because the AIDS crisis. Like, I'm wondering what's to come, but I'm also wondering if we're kind of seeing a little hint of how that happens. It's that first whispering, because a lot of these women say that God talks to them directly. I do still wonder if it's Stephen King being kind of misogynistic, because there's an idea that it's easier to talk to, like, it's easier to wriggle in. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's why
women are hysterical.
Right? I think that's why I was like, well, maybe it's the kids, or then it's not so bad. It's still it's bad because he's implying that maybe dads aren't as.
Yeah.
But then maybe it's his daddy issues,
which he has plenty of.
If Annie doesn't have kids and Mrs. Carmody didn't seem to have kids, I don't know how you rectify that. Like,
fair.
I need more information on Mrs. Carmody. And I mean, Annie was already, though, that's when you have the Man in Black step in, because she had a husband who left her and made more cracks in the already cracked brain. Still doesn't explain Mrs. Carmody, but maybe he didn't feel like he had to.
I mean, sometimes evil doesn't need a helping hand. Sometimes it's just there.
Right? But I wonder then, I feel like that's something to keep an eye on.
So we also learned that Derry has a Roanoke feel, seeing as the original settlers of Derry just disappeared. You know, I think it's great that you just talked about Ralph, Annie's husband, because in this story, we get 2 more fucking Ralphs just in this part. Because Bill has a friend named Ralph, and Tom's father is named Ralph.
Do you think that by now somebody had said something to Stephen King about how, like, he uses the same names all the time and he decided to just go for broke and fuck with people?
Maybe. I wouldn't be shocked, but I just, it is interesting, because we also got another Elmer, because we got Elmer Curdy, who opened the Falcon, the gay bar in Derry. And then Elmer Chambers is Jake's dad.
Yeah.
Obviously, we got Bill. We've got Tom. We've got Steve's.
I'd say that it's meant to just be names that are really normal, but Elmer is not a normal fucking name.
The only reason I remember Elmer is because it's my grandfather's name on my mom's side.
Maybe it is a more normal name than I feel like it is.
I mean, maybe it was back then.
It also could be, like, my family has not been in America all that long. The names that are passed down in my family are a lot of Italian names or Americanized Italian names. Like, Katie's done so much family treeing now, I can actually legitimately tell you that's not just me thinking that. She's found all of them. We have a lot of Josephs. Yeah. We have a lot of, like, Vincents and shit like that, because my family passes, it's all Giuseppes and shit like that. So, like, I don't have, and then my grandpa, either he was adopted or his dad was adopted, and we have nothing past there. So I'm hearing these names and going like, that's super fucking weird to me. I don't know, but then, like, I'll hear, like, a Fabrizio, and I'm like, yeah, see, normal fucking names. So.
Thanks, Taryn.
Don't even start with me. That's normal now. Like, there's tons of Tarans now. There was not one other person who had... when I was 17 and working my first job in a coffee shop that I will not name, but don't worry, if you walk outside your house, I promise you'll see one. They're everywhere.
Probably 3.
I met another Taran for almost, like, I had met maybe 2 or 3 by this point. I was 17. They were, like, driving from, like, Washington or Oregon or something down to LA, because we were on a major roadway. And we were both so excited to meet someone else with our names. I still remember this to this day. It's been more years than I was old. At that, it's been like 18 years since then, and I still remember meeting this other person once. I literally just made them a coffee. That's how I found out their name, because I had to write it on the cup. And we both lost our shit, because we never met other people with their name. Now it's like a normal fucking name. But I'll have all of you know I was the original. And don't start with me, because then it'll be a there can be only one situation. Sorry, we are so off the rails tonight.
Well, I'm gonna bring us back
No, I think you should.
Do you think that Stephen King had a feeling that he was going to get in a car accident or get hit by a car?
It's really strange how much I thought he must have got hit by that car much earlier.
Me too.
Considering how much car accident imagery comes up.
Yeah, well, and like, they're not sure if that's what, like, Bill gets hit by a car, and like, the mom thinks that that's why he stutters now, but the dad and Bill are not so sure, according to Georgie's perspective. And like, it's crazy. Like, obviously Jake gets killed by a car, Bill gets hit by a car, there's Paul Sheldon's car accident, there's so much car accident happening. I don't know if he just had like a dream and just couldn't. He's shining.
So I actually am curious to find out too if car accidents were just more prevalent. Because cars have a lot more, I think, safety features. Seatbelt laws only went into effect in like, what, the 90s?
I think so. Some cars didn't even have seatbelts still.
Anti-lock brakes. Let's talk about anti-lock brakes, because I know that you and I have both been in cars that didn't have them, because that's something that's new. Cars that didn't have computers in them to help run them.
We certainly did not have self-driving cars.
Oh my God, right?
Those still get in accidents.
I could go on and on about how different cars are now. Like, it's just so...
It's crazy.
It is crazy. So I wonder if car accidents were just so much more prevalent. And I could be wrong. I do think that they're more survivable now.
Yeah.
But at the same time, because we drive so much faster, I think that if you are hit by a car, it's less like if you're walking down the street and a car hits you. But I don't know, because cars used to be big ass metal tanks back then too. So I don't know. Like, there's just... Cars are constantly being innovated. I should also mention that from mechanics as well. Like, just lots of mechanics. I am not a mechanic. I know very little, but I've picked up lots of shit along the way. That's why I say this.
Fair.
I realize it, because otherwise it kind of sounds like I'm talking out my ass.
Can you have my car ready an hour ago?
Oh my God.
Fuck you, Paul Sheldon. Fuck you, Paul Sheldon.
Oh, maybe I explained the mechanic thing back then in the Paul Sheldon episode.
You might have.
I'm so I have memory.
You know what? It's fine. It's fine.
For the same reason that I just went running through my fucking kitchen yelling. I have memory stuffs, guys. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But.
So, yeah, okay. So Stephen King might have a shine.
I think.
Shocker. Not shocker.
No, like. What, the dude who, like, invented shine might have done it because he has a shine?
Oh, yeah.
And the two people podcasting who end it with a tarot read every time might just believe in a real world shine? No.
Well, on that note, let's talk a little bit about that. Not the tarot, but just kind of the shine in general. Because, obviously, Adrian was a writer. I don't know if I mentioned that. I don't think I did.
Every time I heard it in the audiobook, and every time you say it, and I've never seen any of the Rocky movies, but all I can hear is Adrian! Because everybody does a fucking impression of it. I've never seen a Rocky movie, though.
I doubt you're missing anything. I've only seen one, just because I took my dad to see it.
I'm sorry.
I don't remember it much.
I know that he runs up some stairs.
Yeah.
And it's like a moment.
But anyway, so Adrian is a writer, and he basically, like, became addicted to dairy. And, like, my thing here, and you've talked about this too, like it's attracted to something. And the fact that Adrian is a writer, and obviously we have other writers that struggle with this and get fed upon by whatever the fuck the things, the its of the world are. The fact that it is also, we know for a fact that it targets children. Like, the average age is 3 to 19. Do you think that's because children have good imaginations and that's why writers are also, like, kind of in there? Because if the idea is that, like, because we were talking about it with Misery, with, like, writing a world, could children be creating worlds?
Well, I actually wonder. So I think you're onto something. I think you're right. Because in this case, right, and I'm pulling from the movie here to answer this question. We know that there's some element of, like, feeding on fear, right? Mm-hmm. But the other thing is the way that it presents itself to you. So, like at the beginning with Georgie, you have to see the circus. You have to smell it. There's a clown in the sewer. So he even says, like, an adult wouldn't have, like, an adult would have not believed, like, would have had an issue with this, would have been like, what the fuck?
This is weird.
But Georgie wasn't an adult. Even an older kid would have been like,
Are you a pedophile, sir?
But they have to pull, I think whatever the thing is, has to be able to pull out of the, like, subconscious or out of the brain of something around it. And if it's powered by fear, right? Having the fact that Adrian is a writer probably helps. I think you're right, because there's that imaginative energy. And I think that you can probably speak more to this because you understand some of the, like, psyche stuff. Because I still don't understand the whole ego thing. I will never get it. It will never stick in my brain. And that's okay.
I should have gone into psychology.
Yeah, she should have gone into psychology, hands down. So let's take the scene where Adrian dies, right? And how all of it goes. They leave the bar. You have these people, and one of them takes a pill beforehand.
A red pill?
Oh, yeah, no, that didn't escape my fucking attention.
Perhaps a Novril pill.
But if he had taken a Novril pill, that would have been a downer.
Yeah, no, I'm just joking. I'm not being serious about that, but the imagery.
No, but here's the thing. I am serious about that, and I'm trying to figure that out. Because Annie is feeding these red pills that she's saying are Novril to Paul Sheldon.
I don't know what the Novril looks like. I actually, when I saw this was red, I went digging to try and find the description of the pills. There is no clear denotion of what they look like.
That's fair, but I want to keep...
I just wanted to be...
I want to keep tabs on it because I feel like it's important. She is the one who tells him, this is a pain pill, this is Novril, it's going to take care of you. But Stephen King names Percodan, OxyContin... he has no problem naming real life pain meds. But she named something that I think we looked it up and it's not real.
It's not real. He even says in his intro, like, he made this up.
It's a fake med. So why did he make something up when in this book he had no problem shouting out name brands of actual things?
Yeah. And
this other person takes this pill that's just out there, and it makes them, like, kind of almost, it makes them aggressive in a way that the younger one, the more, and I want to say the more childish one, but we'll just say the younger one for now, because I don't want to. My other problem with that scene was that Stephen King fell into some ableism bullshit as well. Again, it was the 80s. What was considered okay doesn't mean that it was okay, but that's fine. But the younger one, Chris, thank you, noticed, like, hey, my friend's acting really strange. Normally he's the peacekeeper, but he takes this pill and now he's the one agitating our aggressive friend.
Yeah.
So I think that pill is something to keep tabs on, because what if that pill just kind of does what these people need it to do?
Well, sorry.
Oh, no.
Especially because the one that took the pill was Steve.
Interesting. Yeah. And Steve, like, what I also noticed with that is that Steve was fairly hands-off.
Yeah.
Yes.
He was still not considered like Webby's the main perpetrator of the crime. But it was Steve in particular who took the pill.
Yeah.
And it distorted it made him super hype, and he was just way more aggressive than he normally is. But he still wasn't the one who really did the crime.
The situation seems settled, but then they decide to go and find them. And they make it to this bridge, which just so happens to be where they need to be. Mm-hmm. And the person who took the pill is the one who pushes them to go over there, right?
Yeah.
The youngest, Chris, is the one who sees the clown first.
Yeah.
And he's scared in the whole situation.
Yeah.
But the scene itself it's so full of fear. Adrian is terrified. Adrian, the writer, is terrified.
Yeah.
But Chris, the youngest, is the one who sees the clown first.
So the other thing is when we were talking about Misery, I talked a little bit about the right and the left, the giving and the receiving hand. So Georgie's left arm is what gets ripped off.
Yeah.
And Pennywise bites into Adrian's right armpit. And if we assume that Adrian's right-handed, that would be his giving side.
Interesting.
And that, like, so if we're talking about, like, the writer is afraid right now, if right is his giving side, he'd be full. And that would be the side you want to feed from.
That's interesting. Well, so he's getting filled with fear and pain, because pain is the other thing. So he's getting the shit kicked out of him. So he's terrified. He's getting filled with fear. He's imagining all the awful things that are about to happen to him. And there's someone young enough to believe that there is a clown. You have to have all of those things involved. Because, like, when Dawn, like, is trying to scream to get help, no one looks over.
Yeah.
We know that that's not because they're callous. It's because it's some kind of shield or something.
Yeah.
But again, that can only happen because they're just not involved. Like,
yeah.
Whatever it is, they're not there with. But Steve had to take a pill to be involved. Almost like a psychedelic. So it doesn't just hype him up. It, I think, opens.
Yeah.
Because Chris also says he's like the reasonable one of us.
Yeah.
I imagine he wouldn't have been able to be open to the experience any other way. He had to be on a thing.
Yeah.
And the other friend is
He's just an asshole.
Yeah. And then Dawn already felt like Derry was like what did he say about the clown? It was Derry.
Yeah.
So he is also already open to this kind of shit. So the one who probably would have been the least open has taken this random red pill. Like, I think you are absolutely onto a thing. I do want to know which pill was which pill in the Matrix, because the red pill thing seems important. but no, I think you're right. I think the idea that you have to be somebody who is a child, or who is someone like a writer or creative.
Which is the other thing. All the Losers Club went on to do very creative things, with the exception of maybe Stanley, because he became an accountant.
And Stanley is the one who can't go back.
Yeah.
Whose mind is not open enough to go back.
All the others went and they did creative things. Richie, he is a DJ who does these voices. Okay, Eddie's a limo driver. That one maybe not so much with Eddie, actually. Eddie's just amazing.
Fair. Yeah, Eddie is Eddie.
So, you know what? Okay, some of that's there. Ben becomes an architect.
Yeah.
Which involves, and he's famous for massive and new style designs. Beverly becomes a fashion designer, and Bill becomes a writer. They all, for the most part, get very creative in what they choose to do with themselves, with the exception of Stanley and arguably Eddie.
Though I would say that Stanley and Eddie had to have a lot of creativity and imagination to go into business for themselves the way that they did.
They did. Like, that's not easy. It's just not quite the same style as what you would think of with a writer, but you make a solid point. I think
we are accepting donations. It's hard out here. But no,
but no, you make a solid point, because I mean, especially Stanley's chapter, it's so detailed in the gambles that he took to make his life better.
Well, and he ends up working pretty heavily for like the VCR, like the video cassette place. Like he decides to work for creatives a lot, and no, like you have to have a vision.
Yeah,
essentially, you have to be able to see more. And Eddie, it's the same thing. Like the
dragging Pacino around.
Exactly. Like you have to be able to really see. Like I would never think like, oh, you know what? We should get some limos.
Yeah.
And then we can, we'll be limo drivers to the stars.
Yeah.
And who knows where he got that idea from or where that came from. But he's definitely not just a pencil pusher.
Yeah.
And the fact that Stanley was like, you know what, I'm going to study this, like, really kind of like you, as an accountant, which I hope you don't mind me putting out there, as an accountant, that can be something that people assume is a very boring thing, but depending on how you use that, it doesn't, like, I would not call your job, but like, I've seen the shit you get to do with it, I would not call it boring. Like, it is not just you in a really boring suit in a fucking windowless office somewhere doing numbers on an abacus. And yeah, I did just mind pushing up glasses while wearing my own glasses I could have just shoved up my nose. Either of them could have gone that direction, and they took their strengths in a creative way.
Yeah. And then we have Mike, who he stuck around in Derry, which is interesting.
He's the guardian of Derry.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
I would agree with that. And he's also he is diving down, trying to figure out what is happening here. He does want to write his own history book about it.
Yeah.
He's a librarian.
As research kind of people, it takes a lot of creativity and imagination, and because I feel it. I feel pushback on the idea that a librarian is imaginative.
I feel like a librarian's the most imaginative. You're literally surrounded by books.
Yeah, anybody who has that thought, get the fuck out of this. Why would you join a podcast about reading if you thought that, though?
Yeah, no, we love our librarians. We support our local libraries. You should too.
Yeah, I do a lot of books from the library.
Yeah.
Library's the best. Take your librarian some cookies. If you had that thought, take them 24 cookies.
Continuing down the metaphysical trail here, I also actually ran what the number would be for the day of the phone calls, because it just kept getting repeated so fucking many times.
Yeah.
5/28, 1985. May 28th, 1985.
Rock and roll was the top of the charts and radio was king. It was also 3 days before my dad's 21st birthday. I don't know why that took so. Well, he'd been in the Navy and then out of the Navy. I'm pretty he drank hard in the Navy. My dad would more be doing lines of meth by then and coke if he could get it. So
fair enough.
He could party with Stephen King. Again, so sorry, family, but it is you knew Dad.
We believe in dark humor. You know us.
Shot.
So I ran the number. Obviously, it's not a birthday, so it's not quite a normal life path number. But
I mean,
the number that comes up if you were to calculate like a life path number from 5/28, 1985 is 11. Already we know is a very powerful number. Depending on which route you go, you believe there are still people who say, no, keep reducing it down, which would give it 2. But I'm going to stop at 11 first. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because 11 is the card that can be different amongst decks. It can either be justice or it can be strength. And from the very brief look about that I did for why that is, Rider Waite, it's 11s, is going to be justice card. Their greatest enemy, Crowley, made a Toth deck where he swapped that and he made the 11th card Strength, or what is more in his wheelhouse, Lust.
Oh God, thank you. Because I was already ready to interrupt and be like, do you mean... like?
Yeah, no. Crowley thought with his dick first, and his dick second.
Crowley thought with his prostate first, and maybe his dick got involved at some point. I will call out again, last podcast on the left, they have a really amazing, 10-hour long breakdown on the life and misadventures, sure, of Aleister Crowley. If you don't already have every moment of the man's life committed to memory, go listen to it. You're doing yourself a disservice if you haven't.
And there was reason and astrological stuff that went into that choice with the Rider-Waite deck.
Yeah.
Everything I saw in Crowley was just to fuck them.
Oh, I
was his...
just stopped at that. At that alone, it was just to fuck, but...
So, he just decided to swap those?
Yeah.
Either way, I don't know enough about it. Yeah, I don't know enough about the Toth deck. I might try and get one, actually, because honestly, thinking about it and thinking about It, the book It,
yeah,
I could see that being fairly applicable here, given the scene that we will eventually get to and possibly skip. But regardless... I
love the impression that scene has a lot more to do with the chapter that we already read about Beverly and her and Stephen King just really not understanding how abuse victimology works.
Either way...
It's not the right word, I don't care.
I think that... I do think that it's interesting that no matter what, we are a toss-up between either strength/lust or justice for May 28th, 1985. And if you were to continue to reduce it, because you generally don't reduce 11s, it's a powerful number. You don't fuck with that. But if you were to continue to reduce it, you would end up with the High Priestess.
That is really interesting.
The last things that I kind of want to just clean up the end here. Elmer's brother is a bird taxidermist. I think that's why it's called the Falcon, because he got free visual displays.
Which, even if it's not important, is one of my favorite facts so far.
Well, and it's the bird imagery.
Yeah, no,
Stephen King loves him some birds.
No, for sure, and it does make me wonder. It's is your brother named Brown? Does he have a raven with a much cooler name? But no, it makes sense. But again, even if it is not or were not connected, still my favorite fact yet.
The other thing I noticed was some common Stephen King writing, which I figure we're going to start noticing that regardless, because he uses a lot of the same shit again and again and again and again.
Not as bad as Simon Green, and it was the easiest thing in the world. Because as soon as you said that, my brain said it was the easiest thing in the world.
But one thing that it was a line, and it was, and this is from chapter 2, so prepare any amount of rage. It's the line, "Gay is not synonym for stupid." It made me think of when he's in Misery, when he was going, constant reader doesn't mean constant sap. And just this comparative talk, just being a thing, thus means something else. But he's disproving that. I don't know.
Yeah. Weird
Stephen Kingism.
And hey, I want to be clear. I can talk about chapter 2 and keep my fucking pants on. In a rage way, not in a Crowley way.
I think Crowley would still rage that way.
He would probably fuck his rage out, I'm not gonna lie. But no, I can handle it.
Crowley was a very sexual individual is what we're saying.
He based most of his magic on sex.
Yeah.
So we're not just talking shit.
No.
Again, go find, if you don't want to do last pod, just go read a book.
There are other worlds.
Maybe that's what I've meant the whole time.
Maybe. Last thing, and that is to actually talk about that song. Hey, hey, my. by Neil Young.
Not Hey Hey We're the Monkeys.
No.
I'd be a lot happier if that was the one.
Did you listen to the song at all?
No, it's Neil Young.
First of all, this song like wildly makes me think of my dad. Now, obviously, the characters keep saying, you know, out of the blue and into the black. But there is another line actually in this song that I found interesting. And it is the line, the king is gone, but he's not forgotten. And since I know we've talked about it at some point on here, I don't know if it got cut. It might have gotten cut, about the theory that Pennywise is a child of the Crimson King. And I know like the 2017 Dark Tower movie, was it 2017 that it came out? Yeah. I'm of the impression there's a scene when Roland and Jake are walking through some area where someone has spray painted Pennywise lives on a wall. I didn't catch it the last time we watched it. I would have to pay more attention.
Yeah.
But supposedly there's a spot like that from what I've heard. Just the king is gone, but he's not forgotten. I don't know what happens to the Crimson King. And obviously Pennywise keeps coming back every 27 years.
I don't remember.
Well, I guess we'll find out together.
So here's the thing. The Crimson King is a little bit like Sauron.
Yeah.
Yep, that's right. I hadn't worked in the Lord of the Rings reference yet this episode. We're here now.
You gotta work harder at getting those Dune ones in, though.
I know. Whoa, don't even start with me. Anyways, he's a little like Sauron, and he's kind of stuck in his tower. Because Sauron never, like, at least in the movies, like, never leaves his tower. The Crimson King is literally, like, stuck in the Dark Tower. He tried to climb it. He couldn't. Like,
he's like a cat that got stuck in a tree.
Yeah.
Oh, nope, I'm never coming down now.
He's
Get
trapped.
the fire
He's,
department.
Like, in prison. And I could have that wrong.
Yeah.
I want to be... People, if you haven't figured out by now, I don't remember everything that I read. And I get a lot of the facts wrong. And that's half the fun of the podcast.
It is.
Me telling Kat the wrong shit. And then we find out together that I was wrong. From what I remember, he's like imprisoned. But I prefer it that he's just trapped. He tried to go up, he couldn't come back down. And because there's pictures of him like on a balcony, like overlooking the like singing rose field. But I just picture him like he tried to go out on the balcony and then he tried to go back in and like the door's locked. He's like, well, shit. So he's just stuck now. He can't he can't leave. And that's why he needs Flag. Like,
he yells down his orders. Yo, man, you know what? I really want some Taco Bell. Can you just bring me?
Let down your hair. I'll put it in there. No. Like, he finds, like, that's why I say that, like, it's not really a joke when I say that he's Flag's patron.
Yeah.
He enters, like, he chose Flag as that because he needed hands out in the world because he couldn't fucking get back into the tower. And like,
we've all been there.
So he's like spreading his seed somehow and seeding these children because
like Crowley?
Magic, you know, yeah. Well, I don't think Crowley had kids. You can't have kids that way. As much as the Game Grumps will joke about having butt babies, you can't have kids that way. But either way, through magic, he's, you know, maybe seeding out these children because that would be better than a, like, chaotic neutral sorcerer who he just kind of terrifies into doing his bidding. And also maybe could eventually get him out of the tower. The tower that Roland is just drawn to. I don't remember what happens to the Crimson King when Roland makes it to the tower, because that's not the interesting shit that happens when Roland makes it to the tower. I don't give a fuck about the Crimson King, because once Roland makes it to the fucking tower, the shit that goes down when he's there and what the tower like is and everything that goes on, you won't care either. And I'm pretty sure it does really just seem like he is locked out on a balcony.
He's locked on this balcony and he's like got a fucking turkey baster full of his business and he's like tossing it down to Flag.
Flag is like, I should have just stayed in the lane. Delane wasn't so bad. I had a good gig going. I should have been nicer to Peter. This is terrible. Like,
and just like fucking Zelda text at the top. It's dangerous to go alone.
I really should have just stayed until was Peter really all that? Sasha was nice. Like, she was nice. I've made so many mistakes. What have I done? Like,
regrets.
Regrets.
All the regrets.
So with that, like,
the king is gone but not forgotten. And obviously we know that Stephen King likes to, I think, use his name.
But not... So that's not the only king, though.
No.
Because Roland, his dad, Stephen, is also gone. Mm-hmm. And they are of the line of Eld, King Arthur.
Okay.
Which means Roland is also, like, he would also be the king. He'd be the king of Gilead. Mm-hmm. So there's not, like, the Crimson King is gone but not forgotten. But Roland also... People don't... He's very Aragorn-esque in that way. That, like, not everybody knows who he is, but as soon as they hear the line that he's of...
Yeah.
They know who he is.
Yeah.
It's Arthur Eld. He's Roland of the line of Eld. So the king is gone, but not forgotten. Like, if Roland were to actually take up that mantle, it would be very similar to Aragorn, like, doing that. The king is gone, but not forgotten. There's two kings.
I think that's why I wanted to point it out to you in case you had not listened to that song. It's a pretty good song, though. Like, all in all, very good song.
Yeah.
I also have to say, like, the way Stephen King uses music makes me think a lot of Haruki Murakami, who's a Japanese author who also uses music, especially, like, American music.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because they were born just a couple years apart, and they have kind of, like, similar... like trajectory for like their first book getting published and all that. And yeah, so just...
Well, it makes me think of Stephanie Meyer, who wrote Twilight and kind of just used music she liked.
Well, I imagine that these guys are using music that they like.
Yeah, for sure.
So I don't think that that's a difference here. Let's get metaphysical.
Last time we pulled the symbol of optimism, the sun. Let's see what the cards hold for our reading journey as we continue. Page of Wands. The page looks upon his wand, which is his walking staff, and he's wearing a very fancy hat with a little feather in his cap, not unlike Yankee Doodle. And also, he is standing amongst the dunes.
Worked in Dune somehow.
It was coming.
It's the spice. So I do believe we've gotten the Page of Wands before. And just a reminder, if that's the case.
Just a reminder, it's like 100-card deck, and somehow we keep pulling the same cards.
The page embodies passionate, raw potential. Those good ideas out there exist. They just have not yet come to fruition because of inexperience or fear. Dun, dun, dun.
Fear, keep fear.
So we are going to continue reading. We are going to be reading not all of part 2, but some of part 2.
Are we remembering to say?
Give me a moment and I'll get the actual, like, cutoff for you.
Oh my god, that's so many. I can see how many pages it is.
We are reading from the start of part 2 through, we will stop after chapter 7. When you hit chapter 8, stop it. Stop reading. No more.
That's my cape for you guys. So many pages.
It is a thick book. It's a thick book.
All right, y'all. You don't gotta go see other worlds, but you can't stay here.
You can follow us on Instagram at ManyConstantWorlds. You can DM us if you have any thoughts, questions, things you'd like to put out there. You can also email us at manyconstantworlds@gmail.com.